I know that we're about 1 minute ahead of schedule, but I want to make sure we push things so that we were ready as soon as the clock turns, which is what it just did now. And I know we like to start on time. So, my man, what are we talking about today?
Good question. So what was the title that we went with? I'm trying to find it now. Putting me on the spot. I was just looking for it. It's,
Don't you love it
what
when
is
that happens? So, the 3 steps for
no, it's
building
at the top.
winning.
I see it. It's at the top. 3 steps for building a winning sales team.
Yeah. So,
And more
I'm
so,
actually
more
really.
specifically, I do know in our notes we have more like the pitfalls, the problems we see where people fall short, maybe where they micromanage too much, or something like that. So we have all kind of like what, not just like how to do it, but where often people fail or fall short.
Yeah, I think honestly, you bring up a good point, and wisdom is seeing things by both sides, right? Ignorance is only seeing things on one side. So if you only look at what it takes to build a successful sales team without actually looking at what are the common problems and situations that could stop you or otherwise slow you down, then you could be missing out on a lot of things, or you could be doing something wrong that you're not aware of. So why don't you kick us off with a particular question or topic, and let's run with it.
Yeah, so just to give you those who are tuning in now or tuning in later, watching this, to give you some context. I think we often talk about sales, we talk about marketing, business growth, but as we've also been talking about is how things are changing, and so I think this kind of encapsulates all of that, right? How the
Mm-hmm.
market's changed, what that means for B2B sales teams, and the various, I guess, points for discussion that we'd like to talk about. So I think number one is kind of what's usually the problem with B2B sales teams that we have seen, and why aren't they winning? So that's kind of what is that problem? So let me ask you, what are some ideas that come to mind?
One of the first most uh, prominent problems that we see, quite frankly, is that they hire incorrectly. And oftentimes, what they do is they figure, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to hire somebody based on what their LinkedIn profile, their resume, their history looks like. And
Mhm.
so they bring somebody on board because maybe they've been in the industry for a while.
It's
They
common.
might even. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I think it's the most common, right? It's like, oh, they've worked in this industry before.
Exactly. And then they turn around and they say, you know what? We're going to be just a little bit more sophisticated. So we're going to bring in a personality profile, and
Mm,
we're going to run them through maybe a DISC or a Myers-Briggs or a print or something along those lines, which are great to determine role alignment. And those are really effective, and I don't want to discount that. But what ends up happening a lot of times is a lot of salespeople aren't necessarily trained to be good salespeople. A lot of salespeople get in the industry, they're wonderful at building the relationships, and they've managed to convert people through relationships, and it takes time to build their book of business and relationships. And that's how they've done historically fairly well. But then when you move them into another company, there's no guarantee that they're going to be successful. And you hear a lot of founder CEOs where they are been the one who've been doing all the sales in their organization, and they try to hire somebody and that person doesn't work out, and they go, what's going on? And they hire somebody else again and it doesn't work out, and they're like, well, it's probably because our product or our service is far too complicated and I'm the only one that can sell it. It's not really the case. The case is that you're two things. Number one, you're hiring incorrectly, and we'll get to the second one in a minute. So what we like to do is actually there's the uh, personality assessment, obviously that's part of it, but another part of that process that we look for is a skills assessment. Now we use what's known as the Objective Management Group's skills assessment. We do that with all of our clients, and that helps stack the odds massively in their favor, because you compare this person against over 2.2 million other people to see where they stack up. You see where their weaknesses, where their strengths, and so forth. So that creates the short list. And then there's a series of interviews that you want to do that you conduct with them, just to make sure you can determine how well they are at establishing rapport, and the way that sales dance happens in the conversation. So that's one thing, and we can go down a rabbit hole there, but it's really not just hiring on what a resume looks like or a LinkedIn profile and whatnot. It's not just a personality profile. It's like playing Vegas odds. We want to stack all the odds in our favor, and to do that, one of the best things that we use is that profile from Objective Management Group.
Mhm.
The other thing is they don't have a sales playbook.
Before we move on, I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
give an example. What I think is common is I'm a fast growing company. I'm a fast growing startup. I then see that a VP of sales or a higher up salesperson from Slack is available, or
Yeah,
from Dropbox,
yeah,
or if I'm in the med tech space, I see someone from like a big company in that space might be like Cardinal Health, and you're like, oh, they know the healthcare space.
yeah,
Problem is they're really good at their particular job within that massive organization, and there may not be an alignment with your company, right? They're two
right.
very different things. You can't just take someone out of like a huge big company and put them in your small startup type company and just expect success. That's the obvious one, but I do think, as you mentioned, finding that alignment with tools and with Objective Management Group. The other thing I want to add is that you mentioned 2.5 or 2.2 million people. That's just the people that they've surveyed, right? So
Yeah.
it's based on their database of their surveys. That is a very powerful tool, and worth harnessing. So if people are listening, there's only one thing you grab from this.
Yeah.
Maybe it's looking into that before you hire salespeople. But
Yeah,
anyways, you can go.
here's a great tip that you just mentioned, and you'll be surprised at how few people actually do this when it comes to hiring somebody. Let's say I was going to hire you, Zach, and I was going to hire you into a sales role.
Why wouldn't you?
I mean, right? Uh, right before, now that you made the short list and so forth, right before we go ahead and we say, all right, let's do it. What I'll do is I'll say, hey, Zach, I want you to go on the website and I want you to take a look at our products and services. Feel free to use whatever creative license you want. Doesn't have to be accurate. But in our next call, what we're going to do is we're going to role play. And I want you to sell my services to me. And so you just kind of like mock trial this. And
Mhm.
all we're really going for there, I don't really care that they really studied the product and service. They know it inside and out. They know every feature. They know every benefit. That's why we give them the creative license to say whatever they want.
Mhm.
What I'm listening for is how well did they establish rapport at the very beginning? Are they the type of person that's going to be doing all the talking? Or are they going to listen to what I'm saying? Are they going to ask good questions? And I'll intentionally throw like little seeds out there to see if are they going to bite on that? Are they going to pick that up? I'll say something like, "Oh yeah, again, I'm role playing, so I'm playing a different role than I am in this company." I'll be like, "Oh yeah, well, my boss will blah blah blah," and because I want to listen, did they pick up on the fact that I'm not the decision maker? And will they question that? Or at the end of the phone call, I'll say something like, "Okay, well, this is great. Let me think about it." Are they going to get off the phone and be like, "Okay, great. Can I send you a proposal?" Which is the worst thing they can do. Because what's somebody going to say? They'll be like, "Oh, sure, send me a proposal." Doesn't mean anything. Yet salespeople get all excited and they're like, "Woo, sending a proposal. Guess what? Close the deal." That's not going to
Got
happen.
him.
Yeah, got them. So, those are all the different things. So, there is a real strategy and a process and an effective system that you have to deploy inside of your organization in order to hire correctly.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. Yeah.
Hold that thought for a second though, because
Yes.
I think it gets to some of the points we have downstream in this particular workshop in terms
Yep.
of like data driven, right? So
Yep.
you're talking about like how much do they talk? Do they build a rapport? We also know maybe more than others, but I think the good companies you see are using tools like Gong, so they know how much their best salespeople are talking
Right.
versus listening, and that's one of the things we talk about later on. So I mean, you can keep going, but that's a point that we're going to talk about in a little bit in terms of data driven decisions and how
Yeah.
do you manage your sales team.
Great point. Yeah, and let's look at the sales playbook because I touched about that.
Okay, so yeah, that's the
an
second
action.
one, right? So that's problem is number one was kind of the first problem was hiring incorrectly. The second one is they don't have a sales playbook, right?
Right. And so what happens is they turn around, they go, okay, hey, Zach, I see you've been in the industry for a long time. That's awesome. This looks good. Why don't you come on and join my company? And then you join on day one, and now the sales manager or the CEO says, all right, Zach, I'll teach you everything that you need to know about our product or service. Now go out there and start selling.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're going to have to learn what are the right questions to ask, what are the problems that you're solving, how do you handle certain objections, what are sort of those key perspectives, those aha moments that you've delivered in your conversation that all of a sudden get somebody to go, whoa, that changes everything. See, even the founder-led sales teams, they didn't automatically start out of the gates day one, just closing boom, 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 right off the bat. What ends up happening is over time, they figure out there's certain language and sentences and questions that convert the sale. Zach, to give credit where credit's due, many years ago, you were one of the first people to call me out on that. When we were hiring and expanding our sales team, you said, hey, let's make sure we build out that sales playbook. Let's do what we say we do and build out that sales playbook. It's perfect. So I built out the sales playbook. And then all of a sudden we're looking at the close rates of the sales team on the sales playbook. And my close rate, even among cold, was somewhere around, was it like 67, 68%, something like that? But
Yeah,
the close rate for the team was closer to 20%, which is kind of embarrassing. And so you're saying, I'm saying, Zach, what's happening? Do you have any idea what's going on? And then you listened to my calls, and then you listened to the sales team's calls, and you came back and you go, hey, Charlie, with all due respect, you're not even following the sales playbook. So how do you expect our salespeople to close where you're closing when you're not following the playbook that you created? That
yeah.
was a key distinction.
I
So
think there's a big problem in there too, where you often have companies that will hire and be like, well, it's their responsibility to figure it out.
yeah,
And I'm not in that camp. I think if you're going to hire a salesperson to be successful, you should have these things figured out beforehand.
you're right.
Unless you're going into it with a clear understanding that, like, hey, this might take them a really long time to figure out what actually sells. We haven't figured it out, so we're hoping we're going to bring someone on who can make it happen. You better give them enough runway, because it's going to be a long iterative process to figure that out. Or maybe it's not, but it can be. And some people go in there with this short-term mindset. They have to start selling in 30 days, but also, by the way, get out there and do it on your own. It's just like you're setting yourself up and them for failure. And that's, no one's going to succeed in that. But yeah, I think that's a common thing that we see as well.
If you are going to bring somebody on to build out a sales playbook, and we've done that as well,
Yeah.
where for different roles where we bring somebody on and we're hiring them with the responsibility of building in a sales playbook, you have to build that into your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't expect this person to be ROIing positive in the first 90 days if they haven't actually if you haven't built out a playbook. It's going to take them a while and testing and
It's
tweaking.
like a go-to-market strategy and expecting it to work like overnight. It's like, that's just
It's a great
unrealistic. It's not going to happen. You need to speak with customers. You have to speak with your ideal prospect, and all that, and figure out all those different things before you can start to see that success. Now, for some people, it comes faster, right? But there's usually a process involved.
So first problem is they hire incorrectly. The second problem is they don't have a sales playbook. The third problem is that they just don't know how to manage. Right?
Yeah.
You bring on a salesperson, the last thing you do, or where mistakes is people just say, okay, I brought you on, now go do your job, and they don't talk to them again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different, I think, mistakes that you see over time. At least we'd see, given that we speak to so many different businesses. I think where you and I might differ, actually, which is good. It's good to. I'm more of like a bigger picture type of salesperson sometimes, like. Whereas I think maybe not you, but I think other people might be more like specific in this moment, say this sort of thing. And for me to think about it, I need to better understand like where are we at and where am I trying to get to,
Yeah.
and then what is all that. And so for me, at least when I tried to focus so much on individual moves, it was overwhelming to me. Like, hey, in this
Yeah.
moment, say this. Okay, this next sentence, say this, or this next question, say that. And very specific things. I know that can be a little difficult in terms of managing, and we saw that with a couple folks that we had on our team where we were just maybe drilling too hard on a specific thing. So that's one way. The other, faux pas, if you will, is going the exact opposite. I mean, like you said, go get them, figure it out. I expect money to be in my bank account, but other than that, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
I'm not gonna help at all. So don't mess up, sort of thing.
Yeah, and so you want to really actively manage them. We'll talk about that actually as we build in
Yeah.
like what are the steps for building out that successful sales team. So I guess Zach, if let me flip the script here, and I'm going to now bring the question to you. So, what are one of the things that you're looking for in building a team? And I'm asking Zach because in our company, Zach is largely involved in working directly with the sales team, and so um, what are some of the things that you look for, Zach, when you're bringing in a top performing salesperson in the company?
Yeah. I mean, so you touched on quite a bit of it with like OMG or Objective Management Group, building rapport. Like that whole interview process, I think is illustrates or illuminates what that type of person is or what that type of salesperson can be. But I think for me, in the line of work that we do, and most of the companies we work with, I can't speak for all of them, but for service based and looking for someone who's more consultative, who's going to be a good listener. Because I think in
Yeah,
what we do, there can be, differences, and you're trying to find and listen to the pain points and understand, can you help them or not? And
yeah,
if you're talking the entire time, it's funny because I'm doing that right now, but if you're talking the entire time, you're not allowing them to tell you what problems they have and how can you help them. Is this a waste of time or not? Are we just kind of wasting our time on this call, or is there a potential fit? And so I think that's number one for me is, are they going to be a good listener? Are they going to be able to ask the right questions? And if you're going to just kind of stumble through a script and not have the ability to just have a conversation and ask questions to get to the meat of the problem, I think you're going to have a hard time in sales.
yeah. I agree. An insecure or a unsophisticated salesperson will spend 70 or 80% of the time talking because they feel like they need to prove to the other person on the other side of the line that they know what they're talking about. So they just talk, 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 talk. Yet a more sophisticated salesperson does the opposite. They sit there and they listen and they'll ask questions. And then they'll come back, well, what do you mean by that? Explain that a little bit more. So in an ideal situation, then what would that look like for you? So you get a real understanding of the most important things possible for them. So listening skills, questioning skills, rapport. One of the other things that's often overlooked is how they control the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
There's that funny little dance, right, that goes on between the prospect and the salesperson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a delicate balance, right? You want to be respectful. You want to listen. You want to almost be soft and sensitive and listen, and you do those things, but also you don't want to be a pushover, and you don't want to allow them to steamroll right through. If I ask you a question and I allow you to talk for 30 minutes straight, that is not a sales conversation, right?
Yeah,
Like I've lost the plot. It's over. Might as well just, throw in the towel because that conversation's gone. So yeah, it's finding that balance of allowing them to talk open, and then being able to be like, okay, let me stop you there. Let me just get
yeah.
back on track, ask some questions. So yeah, it is kind of a fine balance.
And that controlling the conversation, the sale, statistically speaking, we're just going to go to the person who controls the conversation. So if Zach is my prospect and he immediately pipes into the call and says, "All right, Charlie, so here's the deal. I only got 45 minutes on the clock, but I got some really important questions. Number one, what is the price of the service?
Mm-hmm.
I might come in and go, Zach, that's a great question. I promise we're going to get to that question. You mind if I just stop you right there? You're kind of on page 7. I need to go to page 1 to see first if this service even makes sense for you. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions? And you say, okay, that's fine. So I just
Mhm.
reestablished control, but I gave you the illusion of control because I asked the question, is it okay if blah, blah, blah? So you're still feeling like you're in control. You're like, yeah, I gave you permission. That's fine. So that part is important. Go ahead, Zach. You were going to say something.
There's basically two things. I mean, you just did a really great job of kind of like turning that around. I think you want to find someone who can use that negative momentum and keep it swinging, but just go in the other direction, right? Like kind of
Yeah.
that pendulum. And so that comes with experience and time and training. Um, I think, there's, I was going to say something. I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. Go ahead. You keep going. Let me get back to you.
No problem. So, there's just all these things. When we talk about what we're looking for in a team, there's that skill set and all the different variables that we've talked about. Skill set is just super, super, super important.
Got it. I
And
know
are
what I
they
was going to say. I was
coach?
going to
Go ahead.
say that, one of the problems that a small business owners run into, especially one who's had success, we think there's only one way to sell, right?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't buy this way. So this guy, and you have to be careful in doing that. And just because you wouldn't buy like that, or your, your wife wouldn't buy like that, or your brother, your sister, don't listen to them,
Yeah.
like do what actually works, figure that part out. And if you're uncomfortable with it, maybe find a way to get comfortable with it, or
Absolutely.
just stretch yourself. Because I think that's another thing too that limits a lot of people in sales, and or believing that sales can be possible, is just like, oh, I would never buy like that. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you're not your prospect, so
Yeah.
it's okay that you wouldn't buy like that.
And then the other couple of things that we look for is, are they coachable? Because if they're not coachable and they think they know it all, I don't work with them, and I don't think you should either. And then
Mm-hmm.
the last one, and this is the part that I love the most, is what is the drive like? Now we have a new member on our team. Oh, he's extraordinary. Just makes me smile every time I talk to him, just because he's great. And it's John. And the best way that I can describe him is he's like a racehorse, and he's a racehorse and race day. And if you've ever seen a racehorse, they get inside that pen and they keep bumping up against the front of the gate, because they're so eager to get out there. They have all this energy and they just want to run, 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 run. And that's a salesperson with extraordinary drive. They start day one, they're super inspired, and they just can't wait to just hit the ground running, hit the ground running. They'll take massive action, consistent action. They're not afraid of making mistakes because they know every single mistake they make gets them one step closer to a successful sales call. And drive is such an important determining factor on whether or not you're going to have a winning member of your sales team. So
Mm-hmm.
then let's go
The
to the next question, Zach.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there's another question that we got, and it was based, and I'll ask you kind of to start us off if you don't mind. But
Yeah.
so we answered, what's usually the problem with the B2B sales teams that you've advised, and why aren't they winning? The second one is the B2B team. What are you looking for in terms of the sales team? And so you touched on a few things there. And another question, or the next one, was, how do I know my team is winning? So how do I
Oh,
know that they're successful? What are some things that come to mind for you?
so, the most obvious response that people are probably thinking I'm going to answer is, are they achieving quota?
Mhm.
And, that would be the most obvious. But let's go beyond that. More important, I'm looking at, are they making progress? Are they improving from 1 month to the next month to the next month to the next month? And the only way you're going to know that is if you're tracking their their activities and how well things are going. And for me, that's when I look at, is the team winning? Are they consistently making progress from 1 month to the next? Now, we have to set realistic expectations, right? So let's say you're bringing on a sales team for the first time. You cannot expect these people within the first 30 days to just knock it out of the park. It typically, you would allow for 90 days. So the first 30 days, it's really all about learning. It's trying to get their sea legs. They're role playing with every member of the team. They're listening to prior sales calls. They're studying the sales playbook. They're asking questions. They're doing a little research into the ideal customer they're going to be talking about. They're starting to, they're making sure the LinkedIn profile is updated, and, starting to interact and dialogue back and forth through social selling. They're just earning their sea legs. Then the next 30 days, now they're starting to, take some of the calls, and they're getting feedback on these calls, and they're realizing where they're making mistakes and so forth, and they're starting to improve. But the 30 to 60 day period, you're just expecting them, maybe they make a couple of sales here and there. So nothing huge. And then the final 30 days, especially if they have a sales playbook, that's when that final 30 days, they should start to either break even or pay or start paying for themselves, where you start to get an ROI. So you have those realistic expectations. But, you know, I think this is going to kind of go into that next question. How do I know my, or how do you keep like an awesome sales team or whatnot? If you're going to make that progress, the only way you're going to make progress is with active management. And I know, Zach, this is something strongly in your wheelhouse, because again, you do this day in and day out. But what is active management?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit with how do I know my team is winning, and then getting into the next question, which is how do I keep my awesome sales team doing what they do best. I am just speaking straight out of the Sandler sales playbook, basically, because we're big fans of that. Obviously, I say that almost every time we do a workshop, but they always talked about it, and I tend to agree. And this is how we do this as well: is a cookbook, right? So I can't control how someone shows up. I can't control how they do in those calls, or if they're upset, angry, whatever. But what I can control is my activity. And so that if that means I need to make 80 dials, or I'm just throwing out some random number, but like if I need to do certain activities that will help me reach that goal early on, that's what I'm tracking, right? I want to see the activity. I want to see that we're improving. We use Gong, so we listen to calls. We can see where areas of improvement are, not just completely tearing down calls, but hey, maybe here's some areas to coach on, and go from there. So that's kind of the active management that I think of, the daily touch points, conversation, and just ongoing training.
Yep.
My bad.
A phone call.
Yeah, so I mean, those are just some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, just as you said, daily touch points. Big mistake is not touching base with people every day, salespeople, because they deal with a lot of rejection. And so touching base with them every day helps to ensure that you're going to maintain that relationship and build retention, especially in a virtual organization. And then not only are you tracking the daily activities, but you need to give them that feedback. And so you've got the scorecards and whatnot when you're listening, so they know how to improve. Otherwise, they don't have that perspective. They're reading the label from inside the bottle, which can be difficult. And then, there's so many other things, but I know we've gone really much longer than we normally do on these daily quick discussions. But I also feel that it's important that they feel supported. And part of that feeling supported is not only with the regular feedback, but understanding their personal goals and how their personal goals tie within the company goals as well. So they see more than just, I'm driving sales for the company, how, working within the company can help them better reach their goals. So I guess in summary, if we look at, what are the 3 steps for building a sales team, we actually covered a lot, probably a heck of a lot more than 3. But if we do like the big 3, it's about hiring correctly. It's about providing people with the right sales playbook. And it's also about making sure that you're managing your team effectively. And those would actually be the real big 3, that if you do those things and you do those things right, you will have a top performing, absolutely kick-ass sales team. And if you have any questions with how you can do that within your organization, if you've struggled maintaining a high conversion rate, if you struggled finding the right people, if you struggled even building that sales playbook, whatever that might be, feel free to reach out to us over at predictableprofits.com. Again, predictableprofits.com. This is what we do day in and day out for 7, 8, and even a few 9-figure companies. So be more than happy to support you there, and we'll get an understanding of what you need, your unique needs, and plug that in and help you out. My man, Zach, I think that wraps it up.
It does. Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Same time next week. If you like what we covered, feel free to like it, subscribe, whatever it is. Leave comments. Your comments help to guide these future conversations. So thank you again. We'll see y'all later.